And I'd also remind the council that the meeting is open to the public via the Zoom link. And call-in information has been posted to our city's website and the council packet. So with that, I would ask Michelle to please call the roll and remind the council to unmute yourself and then respond and then mute yourself again as we go through this process. Thank you.
Potato?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Hayden?
Here.
Nutter?
Did you say Hochstetter?
Yes, I did. Councilmember Hochstetter?
I'm here.
Newman?
Here.
Peterson?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Okay, all council members are present. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And Michelle, would you please read the consent agenda?
I'm sorry. Approval of the minutes from the regular council meeting of March 16th, 2020, April 13th, 2020 special council meeting, May 18th, 2020 special study session, and June 8th, 2020 study session. Item 2, approval of the checks and electronic payments in the amount of $8,542,873.20. Item 3, Resolution 1553, Department of Commerce Grant Acceptance CARES Act. Item 4, amending and restating Calvary Community Church Settlement Agreement. Item 5, acceptance Pierce County Lodging Tax Grant. Item 6, consultant services contract, operations facility project phase 1 design. Item 7, FEMA grant acceptance, South Tank Reservoir. Item 8, South Tank Reservoir seismic retrofit consultant contract. Item 9, ratification and approval of property acquisition number 9 ditch. Item 10, floodplains by design grant acceptance, Pacific Point Bar. Item 11, Academy Street bicycle lanes, Sound Transit grant agreement. Item 12, River Grove pedestrian bridge, Sound Transit grant agreement. Item 13, COVID-19 emergency declaration, confirmation of rules and regulations.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a very long list, a sign of all the work that has needed to get done. I'd ask if there's any council member would like to have any of the items listed on the consent agenda removed for separate consideration. I'd call on Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you. I'd like to remove item number 4.
Okay. Any other items on the consent agenda that any member of the council would like to have removed for separate consideration, other than that which has already been proposed, item number 4? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion by the deputy mayor to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number 4, which having to do with the Calvary Community Church Settlement Agreement? Deputy Mayor.
I move we approve all items except item number 4 on the consent agenda as written.
Thank you very much. Could I get a second by Councilmember Hochstetter?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, though, all those in favor of adopting the consent agenda with the exception of item number 4, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed, please say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and the consent agenda is adopted with the exception of item number 4. I guess I would call on Councilmember Peterson for a motion for item number 4.
Sure. What am I specifically asking for in the motion?
A motion to approve the particular item amending and restating the Calvary.
I move that we approve item number 4, amending and restating Calvary Community Church Settlement Agreement.
Okay, could I get a second to that motion?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been seconded by Councilmember Hochstetter. Melanie, would you like an explanation or would you like to raise the issues that you want addressed?
I would just love to hear, based on our conversation at the last study session, what staff was able to do as far as noticing and if we heard anything from our community members.
Okay, who's going to respond to that in terms of staff? Is that Ryan?
Yes, Mayor, I can respond. Councilmember Peterson and council members, we mailed out notice on Tuesday to about 40 property owners, folks that live along both sides of Valley Avenue from SR 410 up to Mead McCumber. And then we also noticed houses on the south side of Mead McCumber from Valley Avenue down to about 153rd, which really encompasses a good deal of the area for those who would be, most closely in proximity to the church. And we did not receive any comments back from anybody. I should also note that it went out in the e-news, which is a pretty large emailing that we do every week. Carmen sends out, our communications director. And then we also had it posted on our rumors page on the website. And we didn't receive any comments back from the community or from community members with that notice.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Councilmember Peterson, any further comment or questions?
No, just thank you to staff for having such a quick turnaround on getting the word out to the potentially impacted residents. And thank you to the mayor for supporting that in our study session. No news is good news. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this particular item on the consent agenda from other members of the council? Okay, all those in favor of amending and restating the Calvary Community Church Settlement Agreement, please signify by saying aye.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, you did have a hand raised, and that's City Attorney Marquez.
Okay,
I
thank
was
you.
just gonna-
Go
I was
ahead.
going to ask you to provide an opportunity for anyone that may have called in that wishes to speak to this issue. We didn't receive anything in writing. There may be somebody attending tonight that wants to speak to it.
Sure, okay. Anybody that may be listening in or viewing who would like to raise a question or comment?
And Mayor, if I might, if they are joining us on Zoom, there's a raise your hand button in the bottom right corner on your participant screen. And if you're joining us by phone, if you press *9, we'll be able to see if you raised your hand.
There you go. Either look at your screen, hand raise, or *9 if you're on a phone. Anybody out there? Okay. Thanks, Jason, for raising that. That being the case, all those in favor, again, of amending and restating the Calvary Community Church Settlement Agreement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. And the ayes have it. And the the Calvary Church Community Settlement is approved. Then we'll go on to public hearings. There's no public hearing this evening. Go on to regular business. Under unfinished business, there are no unfinished business this evening. And then we move on to public comment, and I'll ask the clerk to read the public comment instructions in just a moment. But first, I just want to remind everybody that the public was encouraged to submit their comments to the city clerk by email before tonight's meeting. And she would read any emails received into the record. Michelle, were there any public comments received?
No, there weren't.
Okay. And again, as Jason said, there's ways to raise your hand or *9 if you're calling in. Are there any members of the public that are listening or watching that have any comments they would like to make for anything that is not on the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, I'm not going to ask Michelle to read the public comments instruction, and instead would close public comment and move on to new business. First item on new business is ordinance number 2732, which is the Shoreline Master Plan Amendment. And could I get a motion by the deputy mayor?
Of course. I move to adopt the recommended and required changes proposed by Ecology and as modified by staff to complete the SMP periodic review.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by the deputy mayor and seconded by Councilmember Peterson. Call on Associate Planner Scott Waller. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Before you tonight is the final action on Sumner's Shoreline Master Program periodic review. And a brief refresher on this, since it's been a while, but cities across Washington are required to review and update their shoreline master programs. And these address and regulate large bodies of water and the areas around them. In Sumner, that means the Puyallup and the White Rivers. Many of you recall we started this and went through the majority of the update last year and submitted our proposal to Ecology. Since then, Ecology has completed their comprehensive review and have conditionally approved it with the edits you see tonight. These are primarily adjustments to the final formatting and edits to specific language. There was one requested change that Sumner revised in order to provide greater flexibility for specific uses within Shoreline. But other than that, we didn't have any issues with Ecology's recommended and required changes. And staff recommends that council adopt Ecology's recommended and required changes with the edit made by staff so we can complete our comprehensive or our Shoreline Master Program periodic review. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or offer clarifications.
Thank you very much, Scott. I would ask if any members of the council have any questions or comments on the ordinance that is before you. Please remember to raise your hand in your window and then I will call on you. Any members of the council have any questions or comments on this particular issue? Seeing none, is there any member of the public that is either viewing or listening in that would like to comment on this particular item? Okay, seeing none, Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Hochstetter? Councilmember Hochstetter?
Yes. Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Potato?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Hayden?
Yes.
And the ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, which is ordinance number 2733, which is the 2020 budget amendment dash COVID-19 response. And I would call on Councilmember Reed for a motion. Patrick, unmute yourself. We heard you before, but we can't hear you now.
Do you have me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm getting a weak connection. I heard half of what you said. I'm sorry, Mayor.
I called on you for a motion regarding the ordinance number 2733.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adopt ordinance number 2733, approving the 2019-2020 mid-biennial budget amendment.
Thank you very much. Could I get a second by Councilmember Potato?
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'd call on Chief Financial Officer Cassandra Raymond. Cassandra.
Good evening, everyone. Before you is ordinance 2733. This is amending the 2019-2020 biennial budget, specifically for 2020 with regards to fiscal impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. We know We know that the pandemic is already creating a fiscal impact, not only for Sumner, but regionally as well as nationally. We also know that forecasting that fiscal impact is difficult. We don't know what the next 6, 12, 18, 24, or even beyond is going to look like. We know that the recession began in February. We don't know how long it's going to last or how deep it's going to be. We also don't know what our recovery is going to look like, whether we're going to see a quick outlet out of the recession, or if it's going to be a more gradual curve out. We also don't know what the COVID impact, how the COVID-19 pandemic will be impacting not only consumer confidence, but spending habits. As businesses open, how are people going to be responding to that opening and spending their money? We're not sure the likelihood of a fall or a spring resurgence of the virus. And then there's also a question of the status of state and federal aid to local municipalities. What we're seeing is a significant impact to the revenues that support not only our general fund, but our capital projects as well. These include sales tax, the timing of our property tax, motor vehicle fuel taxes, real estate excise taxes, which support our capital programs, building permits and fees, charges for service. And then as the state and federal also see impacts of the COVID recession, we're seeing an impact to the funding streams that would normally fund our capital grants. When we're doing our analysis, we're also seeing some uncertainty in just the timing of being able to really analyze the revenue streams and forecast what the impact is going to be. For instance, sales tax makes up 38% of our general fund. It's remitted monthly, but there's a 2-month lag. So the receipts that we see are for transactions that took place 2 months ago. Our property tax has a 1-month lag, and utilities tax are also 1 month. So it's difficult to forecast without having current information, just because the situation is so dynamic and changing so quickly. When we take a look at our sales tax, that's the largest revenue source into our general fund. When we analyze our sales tax, we can categorize it into multiple categories. And what we see is all of the categories are subject to impacts from the pandemic. We don't have any revenue stream that's really immune to the effects. Retail and trade, of course, makes it 54% of our overall sales tax. And with the governor's stay home orders, that's been significantly impacted as well. When we take a look at what we're analyzing for our sales tax revenue, we have our 2000 adopted, that's our blue line, our 2020 estimates that were prior to the pandemic, and we see that there was a modest growth programmed in. And then we see the green line, which is the impacts of the pandemic and the rapid drop and then very slow gradual curve out as we enter into a recovery phase. Along with the fiscal impacts to our revenues, we're also seeing some costs that we hadn't budgeted for, specifically due to the pandemic. These are emergency sick leave. We have supplies for PPE and other items, pay for essential staff members. And then as well, we have a fair amount of lost employee production. This is time that our employees would normally have been spending on the regular business that we're generally doing, but instead have been tracked and spent on the pandemic. As of May 12th, so about a month ago, we had incurred about $136,000 in cost, and that number continues to grow. When we look at the potential of federal aid, we know that there are some FEMA funds available. We're not exactly sure what expenses we have that will be eligible for those FEMA funds. We've initiated the processes. We know that a lot of our labor costs will be ineligible, but we are still looking at what our eligibility is as far as supplies. One thing we do know is none of the aid that's been offered so far covers lost revenue, and that's really the biggest impact that we're seeing. The CARES Act has restricted uses as well, and also doesn't cover lost revenue. So although we'll be able to recoup some of our direct and indirect costs, the biggest impacts of the lost revenue is something that we're going to have to address. In order to address those impacts of the lost revenue, Staff and council work to identify toolbox items. What is in our toolbox that we have that we can address these fiscal impacts? And we're able to separate into several different tiers, things that we could do immediately, things that we can look at if we need to continue to address the impacts, and then things that are out there as possibilities if we need to further tighten our resources. The tier 1 toolbox that we identified is what's presented in tonight's budget amendment. These include items such as returning Alder Avenue remediation funds to the general fund. These were remediation funds that were targeted to be transferred out of the general fund for remediation of the Alder Avenue site. That site was sold, and so we're able to return those funds into the general fund, which frankly has been a fortuitous boon. We were able to make some labor changes and identify those to be made immediately. Those include eliminating our 2020 interns in communications, engineering, and community development, deferring the 2020 hiring of a communications specialist, and deferring hiring of a full-time patrol officer to 2021. We eliminated our 2020 volunteer sidewalk program, as well as our city reader board that was programmed in the budget. We're deferring some projects as well. That includes the city council chambers remodel, reducing our 2020 street maintenance program, deferring purchase of street striping equipment, reducing our remaining traffic calming program for 2020. We also asked all of our departments to review their budgets to make sure that all possible cuts were made for 2020. That includes eliminating all non-essential 2020 travel and training and minimizing our operating expenditures to the bare minimum. We also eliminated a fair amount of event funding for 2020. These are programs that have had to be canceled due to the impacts of the pandemic, and so we're able to return those funds to the general fund. When we take all these items together, we have our budget amendment, and we can see we are reducing about $3.2 million in revenues and about $3.1 million in expenditures out of the 2020 budget. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Cassandra. Any members of the council have any questions? I saw a hand raised. Councilmember Botetto.
Yeah, I was wondering on the property tax, you said it was a 1 month lag. What about, like we got extended an extra 6 weeks to turn in our property tax. So was that another factor you have to consider, how soon you'll get those funds?
It is. That's a really good question. Thank you. So we always have the 1 month lag between when Pierce County collects the payments until they remit it to us. And as you noted, Pierce County has extended the deadline for payment of some property taxes, and that will impact our cash flow. We consider that property taxes are one of the most collectible revenue streams that we have. So I don't think we're going to see a huge impact in a reduction of what we collect, but there certainly is an impact to the timing of what we collect. And we've already seen that in our property tax remittances.
Thank you.
Okay, any other council members have any questions of staff or comments? Okay, seeing none, is any member of the public that is either viewing or attending by phone that would like to comment on this particular item? Hearing or seeing none, I would ask Michelle to please call the roll.
Newman,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Potato,
Yes.
Hochstetter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Ordinance number 2733 is passed unanimously. Now we're going to move on to resolution number 1554, and there's a Scrivener error on the agenda. It was originally labeled 1555, but it is resolution number 1554, having to do with the interlocal agreement with Sumner Bonnie Lake School District for the Family Support Center. And I would call on Deputy Mayor Hayden for a motion.
Yes, I move to adopt a resolution 1554 authorizing the mayor to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Sumner Bonnie Lake School District to provide assistance under the CARES Act in a form substantially approved by the city attorney.
Thank you very much. Could I get a second by Councilmember Reed?
I second that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Reed. The screen went blank, but your voice came through. Thank you. Okay, I would call on City Administrator Jason Wilson. Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. As the motion stated, before you tonight is a resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Sumner Bonnie Lake School District and their family center to distribute up to $40,000 of CARES funding to district families that have been impacted by COVID-19. Individuals impacted can apply for financial aid for housing and utility assistance, and that assistance is limited to $500. It's only available to residents within the city limits of Sumner or within our Sumner utility service area. The school district will also refer non-district families to Sumner Rotary, who will distribute city CARES funding under a separate memorandum of understanding. On the screen is the scope of work, which outlines the assistance available a little further, as well as the criteria needed for applicants to provide, including proof of income, which is set to the income guidelines for child nutrition as set forth by the USDA. Additionally, on the phone tonight are the school superintendent, Dr. Lori Dent, as well as Mary Lee Hill Anderson, if you have questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason. Comments or questions by council members? Councilmember Botetto.
Will there be a mechanism to get the, once the funds are distributed by the school district and Rotary, how will they get reimbursed? And is there like a form that you'll be, will need to fill out, or what is the process?
Yeah, so the school district will, if it's a district family, will submit the referral paperwork directly to the city, who will then reimburse the district for that. And the same would be for Sumner Rotary under their agreement. All stuff we'll be working with the district on later this week to finalize once this agreement's approved.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Newman.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank both staff for working on it, but also the school district and Rotary for providing a venue for how we can get these available funds to families, since it's a complicated process. But I have a question for the school district, and that is if there's been discussion yet about making sure that information is available in Spanish.
Dr. Dent, would you like to address that?
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. We're just blessed to have this partnership and to be able to serve our community in this capacity. And Charlotte, to your question, absolutely, this will be available in Spanish and to any other language that it needs to be translated.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for partnering.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Dent. We really have appreciated the partnership, and these tough times, it really makes a difference. Any other member, Councilmember Hochstetter?
Yes, I also wanted to thank the school district and the Sumner Rotary Club for taking on this extra amount of work because it is such a valuable service, and we wouldn't be able to extend this service out without their help. So the agreement is nicely written, and just thank you so much for taking on the extra work.
Thank you very much. And in the chat box, I had Marilee Hill Anderson wondering if she could make a comment. I would grant that request, Marilee, if you can, keep it to a reasonable time frame. Just joking, Marilee. Go ahead.
Mayor Pugh, I would expect nothing less from you with a comment like that when I'm chiming in. First of all, hello to everyone. It's great to see you. Councilmember Newman, I just also wanted to share that our coordinator of the Sumner Bonnie Lake Family Center is bilingual in English and Spanish. So while we intend to translate forms that they would fill out and forms that would advertise this, we also have somebody who can speak Spanish and work through the whole process with the person applying for money. So it doesn't get better than that. We're pretty excited. But thank you, and thank you for looking out for our residents.
No, that's great. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. Any other council members have any questions or comments on this particular item? Okay, seeing none. Any member of the public that's either viewing this and or calling in by phone have any comment on this particular item? Hearing or seeing none, I would ask Michelle to please call the roll.
Potato,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Resolution 1554 passes unanimously. Thank you for all your hard work, staff, on this, and thank you for your partnership, the school district and Sumner Rotary. It is unusual to have a small town to have that kind of cooperative efforts, and it speaks wonderfully of the relationships. We move on to the next item, which is ordinance number 2734, surplus property code amendment. And I would ask Councilmember Reed for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we approve ordinance 2734, amending chapter 3.36 Sumner Municipal Code to update the procedures for disposing of surplus property and to establish a procedure for the intergovernmental transfer of property.
Thank you, Councilmember Reed. Could I get a second by Councilmember Newman?
Second, although I'm going to miss the pictures of the small items.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Newman, for the commentary. I would call on Administrative Service Director Jeff Steffens. Jeff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Before you is ordinance 2734, which amends chapter 3.36 of the Sumner Municipal Code with three primary purposes. One is to update our procedures for disposal of surplus property consistent with recent changes in state law. Secondly is to remove portions of the code that don't reflect our current practice. And third is to create a new section which outlines a process for conveying and or selling property to other governmental agencies. The most substantial update in the surplus procedures is a change in the dollar value limits. This ordinance will make it so any surplus with a value of less than $500 would be approved by the city administrator. Items with a value between $500 and $50,000 would be approved by the finance committee, and anything over $50,000 would come to the full council for approval. And I'm available to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any member of the council have any questions for Jeff or comments on this particular item? Anybody have questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, is there any member of the public that is either viewing or listening in by phone that would like to comment on this particular issue? Okay, seeing or hearing none, Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Peterson,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Potato. Councilmember Potato,
It's on your screen there somewhere, Barb. There you go.
Yes, I was doing
Okay.
space bar. It didn't work.
Okay, thank you very much. Ordinance number 2735 adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. Whoops, excuse me, 2734. Okay, now, sorry. Moving on to ordinance number 2735, amending donation acceptance procedure. Could I get a motion by Councilmember Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move we approve ordinance number 2735, repealing ordinance 2516 and replacing it in its entirety with this ordinance adopting Sumner Municipal Code, Chapter 3.54, establishing a donation acceptance procedure.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reed. Could I get a motion by Councilmember Potato?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Call again on Mr. Jeff Steffens. Jeff.
Thank you. Ordinance 2735 will be, modifying our donation acceptance procedure. State law requires that the city adopt an ordinance to accept donations. So the purpose of this procedure is to adopt a one-time procedure that will govern all future donations. This new procedure proposes 3 tiers of acceptance authority. For donations up to $1,000, that would be the city administrator shall have the authority to accept. For donations between $1,000 and $5,000 will be accepted by the Finance Committee, and donations that exceed $5,000 will be accepted by the City Council by motion or resolution. It also provides language should the city decide to not accept a donation if it is unduly burdensome or costly to the city. And this applies to both monetary and non-monetary donations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steffens. Any questions or comments by any council member? Any questions of Mr. Steffens? Any comments? Okay, seeing none. Any member of the public that is either viewing this on TV or calling in by phone have anything they would like to tell the council about this item? Okay, hearing none. Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Brown,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Potato,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hochstetter.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 2735 is adopted unanimously. And we're going to move on to ordinance number 2736, which has to do with Metro donation acceptance. And again, I would call on Councilmember Reed for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move we adopt ordinance number 2736, accepting the monetary donation to Metro Animal Services from the estate of Lori Wilson to the amount of $26,316.53.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Reed. Could I get a second by Councilmember Newman?
Second.
Thank you very much. And I would call on Chief Brad Mwerke. Chief. Okay, Chief, so far we don't hear you.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
I shared my screen and in the process lost my voice. Thank you. What a great segue, Council, having just previously amended their donation ordinance. So what the council has before you tonight is ordinance number 2736, that if passed would officially accept the donation from the estate of Lori Wilson in the amount of $26,316.53. We were quite surprised last April of last year that we were providing legal notice from a law firm that a former resident Lori Wilson in Edgewood community, part of our Metro Service District, had named us as a named beneficiary of her estate. And in May of this year, the estate had settled, which resulted in this gift that I'm asking council tonight to accept. There was no specific designation on how Ms. Wilson wanted these funds to be used by Metro, and there's no future costs associated with accepting this donation.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any questions the council member has of the chief and or comments? Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor, I see you're unmuted. Did you have something or do you just have to mute?
No.
Okay. Okay. Any member of the public that's either viewing or listening in by phone would like to comment on this issue? Seeing or hearing none. Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Reed,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Potato,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
And the donation is unanimously approved. What a blessing for Metro. Now moved on to 20-074, which is a special session legislative agenda. And could I get a motion by Deputy Mayor Hayden?
I move to approve the legislative agenda for special session and distribute messaging to as appropriate to legislators.
Thank you very much. Could I, oh, thank you. Thank you for the second, Councilmember Brown. You got to it before I could even call on you. Thank you. I would call on Communications Director Carmen Palmer. Carmen.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your attention. This is a legislative agenda getting ready for an anticipated special session of the Washington State Legislature. Just as Cassandra recently outlined earlier to you about how this coronavirus situation has impacted our budget, probably picture that times, I don't know how many times, for how it's going to impact the state budget. So they will need a special session to amend their budget. We're not quite sure when it's going to happen. Some early indications were saying June, July. Some of the comments recently by Governor Inslee, it might be more like September. But we would rather be prepared and ready to go when it does happen than trying to catch up. So that is what's before you tonight. Just like a normal legislative agenda, the purpose is to convey to our legislators and others in other districts how potential action they could take would either benefit us or perhaps hurt us. A little bit at the beginning is just to paint the picture of how we have been impacted by coronavirus. This is kind of repeating what Cassandra just told all of you. You'll notice the XXX for staff hours. That's because, as she said, we are still spending hours on this. So since I don't know when the session will be, I will update that number, toward the last minute before this goes out. All three items are very similar. They are all related to finances, and they basically sum up to, but please don't take any more money. The first one talks about this sales tax mitigation, which we had just fought for with a couple other cities, Kent being the lead in this effort. But not only did we lose what we thought we were going to get into the future, but we lost $400,000 for 2020. And that does hurt given the situation we're in other revenue sources. So, asking for that back, you can ask and see how that goes. The next one is to avoid rating other shared revenue sources. A common way, and I could understand it if I was sitting at the state level, to try to find funding back but not raise taxes, is to take back shared revenues that was originally supposed to go to cities. So while that looks like a great plan at the state level, not so good on our side. So asking them to, please not take that avenue as a solution. And then finally asking for flexibility. You heard Cassandra mention that, we really appreciate the support money that has already been out there, but nothing replaces lost revenue. And that is the biggest impact to us. So just trying to remind our legislators at the state level to give us as much flexibility as possible. What one city needs is not necessarily what our neighbor needs. So that flexibility is a way to make limited dollars have the best impact across all cities. That's it in a nutshell. Just a reminder, this is just for the special session. So we will bring you in the fall a normal legislative agenda for the normal session. And we will bring back perennial topics you normally see on our agendas, like White River Restoration Project and things like that. They did not go away. We continue to do work on those outside of the session, but you don't see it here because we are anticipating that the special session will be quite consumed just with their own financial issues.
Thank you very much, Carmen. I appreciate all your work on this. Council members, any questions or comments? Council member Hochstetter.
Yes, this question is for Carmen. On that one line where you use the word rating, actually, is that a common term that's used in this kind of dipping into funds? I just thought maybe it was maybe a little harsh of a term to use, and I just wondered if it was more commonly used than I knew about.
That is pretty much the common phrase. It is a little now, once you said it, I kind of went, oh, that's a little harsh. But that is the common phrase. I don't know if there's any other feedback from Cassandra or Jason, but I think they'll read it as pretty standard.
Okay, just normal language for them. I just didn't want to come off too harsh in that. I know we want to get our point across, but we also don't want to accuse them of raiding our money, or money that we could be using. So
Actually, I don't mind making that statement because
well,
that's exactly what they're doing. So and Cindy, I appreciate the sensitivities, but I don't think this is probably pretty mild language compared to a lot of things that gets thrown around, down in Olympia.
okay, great. Thank you for answering that for me.
Sure. Okay, any other council members have any comments or questions on the legislative agenda for the special session? Okay, seeing none, any members of the public that are either viewing or listening in by phone would like to comment on this particular item? Okay, seeing or hearing none, Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Potato,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the last item under new business, and it has to do with Resolution 1556, setting a public hearing on the Cannery Way right-of-way vacation. Could I get a motion by Deputy Mayor Hayden?
Yes, I move to adopt Resolution 1556, setting a public hearing for July 6th, 2020 to consider a petition to vacate public right-of-way which abuts the east side of Pacific Avenue and Cannery Way.
Could I get a second by Councilmember Hochstetter?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. I would call on Assistant City Attorney Christy Palmer. Christy.
Good evening. So Resolution 1556, it sets a public hearing on a petition to vacate city right-of-way. That city right-of-way is located on the west side of the White River. It's immediately north of the Cannery Way Bridge. This resolution will set the public hearing for the next July 6th regular council meeting at 6 p.m. We've issued public notices according to state law, and then the public will have opportunity to submit written comments up until 5 p.m. on the day of the hearing, or they could actually comment at the public hearing via this Zoom platform. Thank you.
Okay, council members, any questions or comments on setting a hearing date for this vacation? Questions or comments? Okay, and I know this is going to sound weird, but is there any member of the public that is either viewing or attending by phone that would like to comment on setting a public hearing? Okay, hearing none. Michelle, would you please call the roll?
Hochstetter,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Potato,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Okay, setting the hearing date is unanimously passed. Thank you very much. Takes us on agenda to reports. And first of all, we have reports by the City Council. I would start with Councilmember Potato.
Hi, I just want to congratulate the graduates that finally got to graduate on Friday. And I didn't see the virtual graduation, but I'm just know that the families were pleased with what the school district did for that. And then the Downtown Association is getting ready to reopen. And so they want people to come shop in the stores downtown, and they're doing a lot of cleanup. And, you know, it's just kind of nice to see the town get back into action, but we do still need to keep in mind about social distancing, and, you know, don't forget that the pandemic is still around. So, but it's just good to see some normality coming back to town.
Thank you, Councilmember Potato. Councilmember Brown.
Yes. I just like to remind people to wear a mask and keep your distance.
Exactly. Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Deputy Mayor Hayden.
Yes, I did watch the graduation. My grandson graduated. It was excellent. You would have swore you were there. And it ended in my grandson switching his tassel and running out in the front yard and throwing his hat in the air. So it was really nice. The school district did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hochstetter. You got to mute yourself there. Not yet. There you go.
How about that? How about that? I just want to thank the staff and the mayor for continuing to do the city's business. We've still been very effective, and we're continuing to serve our citizens with our services, and we're moving a lot of good items forward in a really timely manner. I'm just really, really proud of how the staff has been able to make this all work out. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Councilmember Hochstetter. Councilmember Newman.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't forget, like, support the stores, but wear your masks. And also, again, thank you to Rotary and the school district, but also I applaud Sumner in its sort of show of solidarity in supporting Black Lives Matter in a very peaceful and productive way.
Thank you, Councilmember Newman. Councilmember Peterson.
I'd like to echo my fellow council members' comments around masks and graduates and thanking staff. Beyond that, to go off of Council Member Newman's comments, I'd like to acknowledge the civil unrest we've all been experiencing because of the continuous murder of our Black citizens at the hands of the police. The most recent, of course, was that of George Floyd. I'm proud of our city as well, our predominantly white city, that we held a demonstration in support of Black Lives Matter, that it was incredibly moving and comforting to see so many supportive community members. It was also wonderful to listen to the experiences of Black people firsthand, and especially the voices of the youth in our community. Thank you to all the participants, many of which are in this meeting tonight, and especially to the organizers. It was not an easy task. My hope is that the city will come up with actionable steps to work towards an anti-racist future. Chief Maricki has been proactive and has already included use of force and 8 can't wait as agenda items on the public safety meeting this week on the agenda. I'd also like to thank our school district for sharing their action-based plan earlier today on their Facebook page. You can find it if you search Sumner Bonnie Lake School District. I think it was their last post. And I'd like to particularly point out their 21-day racial equity challenge that anyone can participate in at any time on their schedule. It's a combination of videos, articles, and importantly, allows time for reflection on what you've been able to learn. We all have a lot to learn. Please join me and my family in this 21-day challenge. Lastly, and on a different note, I want to acknowledge that as I read through our packet, there are well over $1 million in grant money awarded to the city. And that is phenomenal when you read it all together like that. I know we talk about this a lot about staff, but it was very impactful to read it that way, maybe because we've been out of the loop for a little while. So I want to acknowledge staff on all of that hard work that goes into those applications, particularly now, as we've heard tonight through our budget conversations, those grant monies are greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Councilmember Peterson. Last but not least, Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna hold my comments for the next opportunity because my connection is getting pretty weak and power just flickered a couple of times, so.
Fair enough, Councilmember Reed. Okay. Jason, City Administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I'm excited to actually be having regular council meetings again and being able to clear off some of these items that have been on our agenda for months. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting back to normal with our agendas. As you all know, council committee started meeting again this last week. And then the Planning Commission will be meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. on a Zoom meeting to start talking about the comp plan amendments that were on the study session last week for your information. Also, I wanted to let you know that as of today, our city employees moved into phase 2, which means we do have some limited staffing at City Hall and will continue to help customers by appointment only. And we will not be open to the public until phase 3 under the Governor's Safe Start program. I also want to mention the 21-day challenge that the school district is putting on. We are encouraging all of our staff to participate in that, and we'll be discussing that with them tomorrow at an all-staff meeting. And that is all I have.
Thank you very much, Jason. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of what you all commented on, I'd included in my notes, but I will emphasize, some things. Melanie, I appreciate your comments, on race and Black Lives Matter. The mayor's message in the next email blast going out will include some additional comments on that, as well as encouraging people to take the 21-day challenge. So we'll get that message out there. I would echo the compliments you've given to staff, because what they have managed to do in the midst of a just totally chaotic situation is incredible. And including, putting together the agenda that we have tonight and then being able to carry it off, virtually the way it's being done. And then, give yourselves a compliment too. For a lot of you, this is pretty easy, but for many of you, this isn't so easy. And it is, a really different way of approaching business, but you've all, stepped up and you're doing the city's work, just doing it differently. So, give yourself some compliments too. It ain't easy. I'm happy about all the businesses opening up. We had reports from many of them that they're very busy. I think there's a lot of pent up demand for shopping. The thing that I get most worried about is the fact that I don't see a lot of people wearing masks. And there's a tendency to people to go back to things are just normal. Businesses are open, we want to go shop and it's normal. It ain't normal. It's still out there. The case count, I think yesterday was up to 19 new cases. I think it's down to 14 today. So, I mean, it's good news, but we'll see what the impact is eventually of opening up the economy and not masking in terms of the new caseload. And I hope that it stays down where it is now, but it does have me worried. I read somewhere that shaming is not the thing to do, because what it does is it essentially, makes people do the opposite. If they're trying to shame into wearing masks, it has the opposite effect. So I've put that down aside and will not do that. It's just more on the encouraging note that I hope people are respectful of the disease and the impact that it can have on all of us in Sumner and Pierce County. So that is it in terms of my comments. There is no executive session tonight. And on that note, I would call the meeting adjourned at 7:02. Thank you very much, all of you. Be safe.
Thank you.